Welcome back to Doctrines 1. Again, I'm your teacher, Dr. Benjamin Olson. We're going to continue our discussion of bibliology with a discussion about textual criticism. Ultimately, what we want to do is look at all of these various manuscripts that we have that we looked at in the last two videos, the Old Testament and New Testament manuscripts, and as we compare those manuscripts and compare those texts, what we're doing is called textual criticism. We're trying to decipher what the original text or autographs of the Bible actually said. Notice the term criticism can be used negatively, but we're not using it negatively here because at times the word criticism can mean finding fault with. It is important to note that when it is used here, it means evaluation, the analysis of something with the intent of determining its value. That from Bruce Metzger. Not to be confused with higher criticism. Higher criticism involves judgments on the genuineness of the biblical text. The findings of higher criticism are often subjective, and they try to destroy, sometimes called destructive higher criticism, because it tries to destroy the very authorship and authenticity of the Bible itself. So there is a necessity of textual criticism because there are some variations of the various manuscripts that we have. You would think with 5,800 Greek manuscripts alone, we can't expect them to be 100% the same from beginning to end. Obviously, they were handwritten, and because flawed, erring human beings copied those manuscripts, man is prone to error, and so there are errors in those manuscripts. The difference here is because there were two different schools of thought into how, or actually three different schools of thought into how to copy manuscripts and the value of the very letter of each of the text itself. As compared to the Old Testament, the Masoretes, the very letter of each word was very important to them, and so they meticulously copied. Whereas because of the church was so disparate between its various factions, the Western Church, the Eastern Church, the Antiochene schools, the Alexandrian schools, there were very different methodologies, very different philosophies of copying and how copying should be done. And so because of that, we have varying manuscripts, we have varying textual qualities that we need to discuss, and as we try to harmonize those copies, we have to have a process by which we do that. And of course, there's different schools of thought into how to harmonize those as well, which again we'll talk about. All right. So just before we begin this, we also kind of want to look at the various types of variants that there are, because some of them rise to a level that we really need to deal with, others that don't really rise to that level. So first of all, we have meaningful variants. These textual variants have an impact on what the text actually means. For example, if one manuscript says that Jesus was happy and another manuscript says Jesus was sad, obviously none of them do, that's not an actual quotation from the New Testament, that would be a meaningful variant because it actually changes the meaning of the text itself. You also have viable variants. Is this a viable variant? The textual variants that have a decent chance of having the wording of the original document. Some variants appear only in a single manuscript, so it wouldn't necessarily have a chance of being viable if it's only recorded in one as compared to 799 other texts. The one text is kind of overshadowed by the many texts. So of those two options, we can kind of create a matrix of these different types. So you have those that are neither meaningful nor viable. In other words, they don't have any change in the meaning, nor do they have any viability. They have no chance of being original. You have some that are viable yet not meaningful. In other words, that there's a large chance that this could change what we actually have as our original text, but it's not meaningful. It doesn't actually change the meaning. Perhaps it's just the spelling of a word or spelling of a place name or a person's name. There's others that are meaningful but they aren't very viable. It would change the meaning, but it has no chance of being original. The ones that we actually have to worry about are those that are both viable and meaningful. That they do have a chance to change the meaning, and they do change the meaning, and they do have a chance of being original. So of those, there are very, very few. We're talking about maybe 1.5 to maybe only 0.5% of the entire New Testament that are both meaningful and viable. So of those, you have two major theories or textual theories that are out there. So let's talk about the two. And you're also going to be reading a treatise by Maurice Robinson, very important treatise that I want you to read because it really questions kind of the modern way of doing textual criticism today. Again, I'm not putting that forward for you to say this is what you must believe, but it is something for you to react to, something for you to think about. If you want to see how modern people look at it, there's also Geisler's text that you'll be encountering it there and pretty much anywhere else. So I just wanted you to read through Robinson's work. So he introduces two different theories. The first theory being reasoned eclecticism, or the critical text theory. Okay, so that's the vast majority of translations today. The UBS 4, the NA 28, whatever number they're on at this point, the Nessel-Allen's text. These are the texts that you would find if you go to find a Greek text today, or pick up a modern translation, ESV, NAS, NIV, the Christian Standard Version. Mostly are based on this on the critical text. This method applies a series of rules to various manuscripts that we have found. All right, rules using these rules and a healthy dose of scholarly input, they decide what was likely added or removed or changed, and therefore what's likely original. The result is called the critical text. They critically looked at each verse and to determine what was original. This is the position held by a majority of New Testament scholars today. The other one is called majority text theory. The majority text theory, the majority text scholars take a more mathematical approach to deciding what was the original text of the New Testament. Their approach is to take all the manuscripts that we have and find the textual variant that has support among the majority of manuscripts, and give that reading priority. Now, that doesn't mean that they do a strict mathematical approach. Instead, what they try to do is transmissional theory. What they're doing is how was this transmitted to us? In other words, looking at the way that the variants change. Obviously, if copyists are making small errors along the way, you wouldn't expect a large error to enter immediately. What you would find is small errors along the way, and what they're trying to do is they put together the majority of manuscripts, put them all together, and see, can we determine the transmissional history of these documents to determine which one is the original, or what is the original from the beginning. All right, because most of our New Testament manuscripts come from what's called the Byzantine text family, those that were preserved in Byzantium or Constantinople, the Eastern Empire, the eastern portion of the empire, eastern portion of the church. That will be, as many times called, the Byzantine majority text. The third type of approach to this is what's called the confessional approach, which is textus receptus, that along about the time of the printing press, the text that was there is preserved upon the printing of that text, and when that Greek text was printed for the first time, there is no question then as to what the other manuscripts say. Basically, this is the text that was received, this is the text we're going to go on. Now, in large part, it does reflect the majority text. There are significant differences, particularly when you get to the book of Revelation and some of the later books like Gospel of John. where the majority text and the critical text line up considerably on those two books. And so basically the idea here, the 16th century Greek New Testament that the King James was based on is sometimes called the TR, or the received text. It's the basis for the King James Bible and the New King James Bible, although the New King James does contain a lot of footnotes that recognize where the differences between the majority text and the critical text vary. So let's talk about those textual families then. The three types of textual families are the Alexandrian text type, the Byzantine text type, and what's called the Western text type. These divisions aren't hard and fast. There are some that kind of split the difference between the two. But each textual family or text type tend to contain similar readings to other manuscripts in its family. But the readings are different from the readings of the other textual families. So we kind of divide these into those three different ones. Again, we're only talking about a 1% difference between these three. Or rather the two, the Alexandrian and the Byzantine. We'll talk about the Western here in a second. So the Alexandrian text type needs little introduction because most modern Bibles are based predominantly on the Alexandrian text type, except for, of course, King James and New King James. The Alexandrian text type was preserved in Alexandria, Egypt, and most of the uncials, the Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, Alexandrinus, all fall into this Alexandrian text type family. The sometimes called the shorter text because there are vast portions, verses that are missing, words that are missing, and so sometimes this is also called the shorter text. Then there's the Western text type. Sometimes this is also called the longer text, longer textual family. The Western text, many of these things are added to. Sometimes this is also called a paraphrase, or someone's, this is the way that they would preach the word rather than copy it. So the Western text type, the original Latin or the ancient Latin text is based on the Western text type. Then there's the Byzantine text type. We have more manuscripts of the Byzantine text type by far than most others. Of the 5,000 some odd total continuous text and lectionary manuscripts, 90% or more are basically from the Byzantine text form. However, the majority of these manuscripts are later than the Alexandrian manuscripts. Byzantine text type does have some early manuscripts, early witnesses that go all the way back to the 200s and the 300s. In fact, the Latin Vulgate is based predominantly on the Byzantine text type, which of course dates all the way back to the 5th century. So even though we don't have manuscripts themselves, we do have copies. The Byzantine text type has several names, including the Constantinople text, the Antiochene text, or sometimes even the ecclesiastical text because of its use in the church. All right, so let's look. In fact, we're kind of getting long in the tooth on this video. In the next coming videos, we'll talk about, in the last video here, we'll talk about the rules for textual criticism and the very big difference between the Alexandrian and the Byzantine text type.